Well, everyone, I think the time has come to believe the hype around this distillery, specifically 13th Colony. We're going to talk about their straight rye whiskey today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, like I had mentioned before, hype, is it warranted? Well, we're going to find out a little bit today, talking specifically about their rye whiskey. And recently I was at the distillery, and everything that they've got going on to me is absolutely fantastic. I know there has been some hype kind of leading up to, all their special releases, including their 15th anniversary just recently, including also their 2 releases of their Double Oak. Today, we're going to talk about just the shelf rye whiskey that they have to offer that you can get maybe not only locally or online these days. So what exactly is the 13th Colony rye whiskey? So this is a 95.5. Again, this is their own distillate. This is not anything that they are sourcing. Again, 95% rye, 5% malted barley, hence the 95.5. MSRP on this is right around $42.99. Again, distribution relatively limited. However, you can find it at a lot of online retail places. So the excuses of not being able to get them, in your area are kind of irrelevant for the most part, as long as you're willing to pay a little bit of shipping for that bottle. It is non-age stated, but they've indicated that these blends are anywhere from 4 to 6 years old. More importantly, let's go ahead and see what this thing is going to nose and taste like today on the My Bourbon Journey Whiskey Review channel. So as you can see, again, beautiful color. I mean, this is a really nice, rich kind of almost mahogany, deep, rich copper type of color. Again, moving the whiskey around in the glass a little bit, 95 proof. As I had mentioned before. So again, pretty decent legs, I think, so far for a 95 proof whiskey. So, all right, let's go ahead and dive into the nose. So right away, there's this beautiful, like mint chocolate chip kind of note to it. Definitely lets you know that it's a rye. So you are definitely picking up on that rye grain presence. Little bit of like an herbal characteristic that's there. I'm going to say with the sweetness factor, I'm going to call this more of like a sweet tea than it is getting into that kind of medicinal type of rye note. It's not anything along those lines. With the sweetness that's there, it feels a little bit more like a candied rye, which for me, when I pick up that kind of note in a rye, that starts to feel like what you get from an older rye whiskey, oftentimes in that, anywhere from 8 to kind of 12-year range. So this so far is nosing like an older style kind of rye whiskey. There's also a little bit of that kind of grain factor that's letting you know that maybe this isn't something necessarily from one of the large heritage brands. So again, it's something to be kind of aware of. But again, I think for the most part, when you're honing in on what the nosing is of this so far, it's got beautiful richness and really beautiful rye characters to it so far. Maybe even a hint of like a little bit of a black pepper. So yeah, let's break the nose down a little bit. So you are getting a little bit of that candied effect. Again, that mint chocolate chip, a little bit of that herbalness that's there. Again, I'm going to call it more of a sweet tea. Again, like I mentioned, mint chocolate chip. A little bit of like a black pepper note, so you've got a really nice combo so far on the nose. But more importantly, and the most important part, let's get into the taste of this thing and see what this is going to give us. Cheers. So immediately it lets you know that this is a rye whiskey, specifically a high rye. That rye really kind of kicks in. And again, quickly following the kind of hit of rye, you are getting a little bit more of, like I got on the nose, that mint chocolate chip, a little bit of like a honey note that's there, maybe even some hints of butterscotch, a little bit of black pepper that's there on this one. With the richness that this has, a little bit of like a coffee note or a coffee bean, espresso, something like that. There is this intenseness that it has. There will be a little bit more, again, of that herbal characteristic. Again, I'm going to call it sweet tea because there's that sweetness of the backbone that it has to it, but with a little bit of that herbal characteristic. And again, with it being 95% rye, you're oftentimes going to get that hint of rye grain. So it's kind of hard to get away from that. So you just have to be cognizant of what that high grain is going to do for your whiskey. Beautiful oak that it has on it, and again, with these being in the barrel, in Americus, Georgia, pretty south in Georgia, you're getting a lot of that heat. So the impact of the heat and those barrels is probably allowing this whiskey to age a little bit quicker. Now, what I would say is the attention to detail on, without them allowing this thing to become over oaked, they've done a fantastic job with this. And there's enough of that barrel characteristic. Again, as I continue to talk a little bit more, there feels like some more heavier kind of dark fruits, more of like a fruit concentrate that's there. So, when you think that, you're thinking maybe some heavy raisin, plum, blackberries, things like that. So that part of it is really starting to kind of come out in this as well right now. And as I had mentioned before, this is drinking much more along the lines of an older, more developed rye whiskey. Oftentimes these kind of flavor profiles are ones that you'll get from older whiskeys, anywhere from, again, 8, 10, maybe 12 years old. 95 proof, I think it's pretty good. I'd like this thing to be maybe 100 or 105 just as a daily kind of sipper. I think that extra 5 or 10 proof points would really allow for this thing to shine. But overall, I think how it's drinking, the richness, the overall complexity, again, with it being a 95.5 at 95 proof, I think it's a fantastic, fantastic whiskey. And what I would say to a lot of people would be definitely seek this one out. I think this will become a staple in your collection. I think at that price point and dependent on, where you can get it, I think this is an absolutely incredible rye whiskey to have at your house and to be able to, offer up to someone else who more than likely hasn't had a chance to maybe try something from 13th Colony. This will give them a really good idea of a really fantastic rye whiskey that's not necessarily from one of the large heritage brands. For me, this feels like a rye whiskey that I could definitely sit down around a campfire, simply enjoy, whether you've got a cigar with you or not. I think this would pair extremely well with a really nice cigar, but just sitting around enjoying that and or the company and sharing the whiskey. This feels like one of those whiskeys that you can just get behind. And there's something that is just really resonating with me, about this whiskey. So again, like I had mentioned before, I think this is definitely a buy. And if it sounds like I'm that excited about it, I really am. I'm really excited for the profile that it has, the general availability, and definitely that price point. I think the combination of all of those makes this an absolutely fantastic buy in today's whiskey market. So there you go. Hopefully this gives you a little idea of maybe 13th Colony and at least what it is that they offer from a rye whiskey standpoint. If this is something that you've had, please leave a comment below. Let others who kind of come in and watch the comments, know your thoughts. And I think that's just as important as me giving that information. I think you hearing from other people, in the chat is just as important. So make sure you leave a comment below, on your thoughts of the 13th Colony Rye Whiskey. If you'd like to follow me, you can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, make sure you check out the Patreon link in the description below. A lot of great things down there for you as well. And if I've done the review of the 13th Colony Bourbon, I will have that linked in the description below as well. With that being said, again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. And as always, remember, it's about the journey and not the destination. Cheers.